There's a famous definition, very famous definition. The medieval theologians were all over it, St. Thomas Aquinas and others. The first two verses of the second reading today, the first verses of chapter 11 to the Hebrews. Faith is the realization of what is hoped for, also translated substance, the fullness of what is hoped for, and evidence of things not seen. So it's about the blending of dimensions, you might say. Faith is taking our own dimensions here in space and time and material creation and allowing them to be joined with a higher dimension, the things not seen, what's hoped for. But how does that actually work together, these dimensions? I mean, are they foreign to one another? I mean, is it something that's difficult to bring about? Or is it something that should go together more naturally? In a sense, the whole notion of the supernatural is ultimately invalid because everything is natural at its own level. God's nature is natural to God, and our nature is natural to us, and nature is natural to nature. And the medievals saw the great chain of being, as they call it. It's all connected. It's all connected. You don't have to force something that's, unnatural, into our lives, because these dimensions should go together, which doesn't mean it's not a challenge, but it is something that should be able to work. Now, for example, in the first reading when it speaks about Abraham and Isaac, going off, journeying in the promised land is in a foreign country. It's like our journey through the world, and not establishing any lasting home here, but rather being open to the city that has foundations, whose builder and founder is God. It almost makes it seem like it's unnatural for us to be here. It's certainly temporary. But are we just yearning to get beyond where we are so we can come to heaven? Is this world down here, is this just a test? Is this just a school? Is it something that's uncomfortable and that we're really made for heaven? Well, in a sense, yes. My favorite expression of how the dimensions work together, I'm not sure who said it first, maybe Teilhard de Chardin, but the phrase says that we're not human beings seeking a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. So it's not as if we're here in nature and we have to force ourselves into the spiritual world. The spiritual world itself comes to us. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Some medieval theologians, there I go again, like Duns Scotus, even went so far as to say, and I think he's right, that Jesus Christ would have come anyway into the flesh, even without sin, to bring the dimensions together in a definitive way. And some even say that he wanted to have a human experience. Even God wanted to have a human experience, so spiritual beings want to have a human experience, an experience in this world. And that coming together of the dimensions, which I say should fit together neatly like a jigsaw puzzle, they're already connected intrinsically, is the joy of life, is the meaning of life. The meaning of our lives is to be able to radiate these spiritual dimensions within our own human life, both in this world and in the next. We should already be living in heaven in that sense, where the spiritual realms are joined together so beautifully. To use the image from the gospel, the Master's returned from the wedding feast to introduce us into the wedding feast. God and his people, the spirit world and the material world are joined together in marriage. They fit together. They're made to be joined in marriage. So are we meant to be joined to the Lord. So yes, we don't have a lasting city here, but we are transformed moment by moment to radiate the full divine spiritual dimensions of the universe, of reality. And that's our human challenge. And it should be a joy. It should go smoothly if we don't resist, even though there's a great transformation. We just celebrated August 6th, the Feast of the Transfiguration of Jesus on the mountain, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Jesus showed us what it means to be totally irradiated by divine light. You know, his face became like blinding light and his clothes as white as snow, etc. And that's what we should be, already in this world and in the world to come, to be able to radiate that divine light. So how does that work and what are its effects? And we can get a sense of that from the readings today, both the gospel and the second reading. First of all, it brings us to be able to do things and to be things beyond anything we could ever accomplish on our own, just by our own ego, material ego. Like Abraham begetting and Sarah, giving birth, or Isaac rising from the dead, so to speak, in parable, as the reading suggests. So we can expect to do great things because the divine life is within us, divine power is within us. Jesus himself said it, and nobody ever takes this seriously, but he said it. Greater things than what I'm doing, you will do because I go to the Father and I'm sending you the Spirit. Do we feel that we're doing greater things than Jesus in the world? We should be. That's what he said. So we should be, what would that be? It would be radiating life and love and hope and forgiveness and healing, bringing and enhancing life for other people, for our neighbor who we're intrinsically connected to them in God. We're not separate from one another. And that's the other thing. We won't be living for ourselves anymore, our little ego selves, our little defensive, mortal, fearful, scheming, little ego selves. As we see in the gospel, eating and drinking and getting drunk and beating one another because we think we're separate and because we don't think we're connected. Religion and life is about connection, not about being right. I have the truth. Well, who cares? Are you connected to people? Are you connected to God? That's the truth. Christ is the truth, and we're connected to him, and we're connected intrinsically to one another and to all of reality. That's what spirituality means. That's what the spirit world means. The spirit world is about connection of everything to everything. So when we radiate the divine light and radiate divine love into the world, it's connection. The gift of oneself, like God's gift to us, the wedding gift, our gift to the world is our gift of ourselves, our life and our love given for one another, in intrinsic connection, where neither moth nor consumes nor thieves break in and steal. These spiritual goods can never be taken away and cannot be bought or even merited. They don't have to be merited because they're God's gift, and therefore our gift to one another. Greater things than these will you do because I go to the Father and send you the Spirit. And the other thing I want to emphasize, that the readings emphasize too, is that this is a journey like Abraham's journey. It said Abraham, and I love this verse, it said Abraham went out not knowing where he was going. We don't either. A lot of times, Christians who say, we have the truth, they know exactly where they're going, they know what the truth is, they know where they should go, they know what they should do. No, you don't, because you're connected to the infinite God. What did he say, Jesus? The Spirit blows where it wills. You hear the sound of it, but you don't know where it's coming from. You don't know where it's going, and you don't control it. So we have to expect to be surprised and expanded and have our minds blown and our hearts exploded open as the divine light and the divine love and the divine life, burst through us and out into the world. We don't know where that's going. We have no control over it. So we ought to be surprised. Wow, I didn't know that God was so generous and wonderful and so has such diversity in his creation and loves the diversity. I thought we had to be all the same. God loves diversity. Look around. And so we will too, as we're connected to everyone and everything. We will be led where we don't know. And we will be continually on the journey to the city that has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. So we have to expect to be led out of our comfort zones. And we have to expect constant change. The Buddhists remind us of this all the time, but it's just human wisdom and Christian wisdom too, that life is change. As Cardinal Newman said, whoever changes the most it gets to be the holiest, because God is continually changing us and transforming us and transfiguring us, that we can have more life and more love and more light that we can radiate then to the world. It's a never-ending journey. That was the major theme of St. Gregory of Nyssa's mystical theology, where he said, using the image precisely of the bride and the bridegroom, Jesus, comes to us and says, "Rise, my beloved." Several times in the Song of Songs, the bridegroom says to the bride, "Arise." So Gregory of Nyssa says, why is he saying that? She's already arisen. The last chapter. Because that's the last chapter. The new chapter in our lives is arising, climbing the mountain of the transfiguration and being transformed. That's what we have to expect. Change and transformation and growth in the spiritual world. We can't have constant growth in the economy. The only place we can have constant growth is in our spiritual lives. And that's what will be the mark of whether we're really following the Lord or not. Now, all of you know that there's a lot of change around here. I'm shaken up by it more than you are, I dare say. I'll be moving out of this rectory after 11 years in a week or two to Corpus Christi. But I have to remember, all of this is for transfiguration, for transformation, for growth. It's change. We have to surrender more and more to God, to God's life and God's love and God's light in our lives. And we'll get it if we're just open to this journey. We have here no lasting city, certainly not in the rectory at Notre Dame, but no place in the world. And in the end, we surrender in death. We don't just leave our physical house, we leave our bodies momentarily to be reunited and transformed and transfigured. Of course, the resurrection of the dead. But the point is, it's all a transformation and a change. We've got to let go constantly, as Jesus did on the cross ultimately. That's what we'll be called to do. Not cling. Making, bank accounts for ourselves in this world instead of in the Lord. So as we are embraced by these deeper and higher and richer and more energetic dimensions, let's let ourselves be transformed from one degree of glory to another, as St. Paul says, so that our lowly body will become like his in glory, as St. Paul also says to the Philippians. Expect it, desire it, want it, realize that is the meaning of life in all its dimensions, in all its ages, on all the planets. That's the meaning of life. To join the dimensions and to radiate divine life in this human world. And it's a privilege to be human, as I said at the beginning. Modern writers like Cynthia Bourgeault emphasize the fact that some divine values like mercy and love and fidelity and courage can only, or at least best, be exemplified in this world of matter and space and time and suffering. So it's very valuable. That's why God made it. God made us because we're valuable. And he gives us value and he gives us life and love, so we can be life and love in the world. So let's let ourselves be transfigured. Let's let ourselves surrender to the journey, to go on the journey with good heart and courage and joy and sharing with one another. That's what it's all about. That is what it's all about.